It looks like they're going to finish unless they can win on the weekend on the bottom of the ladder, which is a massive fall from grace. But you think about, Damo, the people that are leaving this football club as well at the end of the season. Like, there is a long list of people off the field, and we know that Peggy O'Neill has left. We know that Brendan Gale is going to the Tassie. But Damo, look at these players.
Well, the decision's been made on the players on the numbers 1 and 2 on that list to contract Rioli till 2027, to Bolton till 2028. Adem comes into the football club with that as part of the thinking. He comes into the football club with Brendan Gale as CEO. Now, within 4 or 5 months of the new calendar year ticking over, Brendan Gale's out. We find out he's checked out beyond that, and he's still at the club now. And the decisions, this has got away from them as his footy club. And let's take a look, Sam, at what Adem said upon the day he was announced publicly as coach as to where he thought, or at least he wanted, the 24 season to look like.
We're not going to put a ceiling on where we could finish. So I get huge upside on watching what other teams have done. Like GWS have gone from the bottom half of the ladder and playing in a prelim tonight. So not to say that that's what we're going to do, but that's what we're going to strive to do. So I want our players walking into the footy club thinking that they can make the top 4 next year. So.
Now, we're not trying to be unfair by playing that back, because every coach is going to get up there and want to instill positivity in the new group. And Adam Kingsley did a fantastic job with GWS in his first season. We've seen other examples of coaches that come in, Lordo, and are able to have an instant effect. The Tigers have been absolutely ravaged by injuries that we just haven't seen. But I'm not sure there's anyone at that football club that thought it would get this bad.
No, that's the point. And Adem 12 months on, is in a far worse situation. The club's in a far worse situation
than when he took over.
Yeah. He can't afford for it to be in free fall again in another 12 months' time. So I'd love to know what Tommy Lynch is thinking. Like, seeing his stars go, I know he's been injured a lot, but is he another one who goes, oh, geez, I've only got a year or so left. Do I try? So they haven't even got to the end of their season yet. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's some more names that pop up at Richmond over the next couple of weeks as well.
When you watch them, Jimmy, are they too easy to play against?
Oh, at the moment, they are. They've had so many injuries. They were nearly dragging some kid who was playing basketball. But I look at it a bit more positively. I know young players have been getting the better of Richmond. This is the amount of Rising Star nominations conceded this year. That would be frustrating from a coaching point of view. Normally you try and make it difficult for young players. But I'm with Lloydie. This off-season, once you get your structure right around you, it's a real chance for Adem to go in and go, I want this guy, I want that guy. It could be a really exciting period for Richmond. They could have a big boatload of draft picks. You can restart, re-go. They've got great off-field support, 100,000 members. They're doing a redevelopment. It could be the start of something really positive if they make some smart decisions in the next 3 to 4 months.
My only worry to that, though, Jim, is like the Gold Coast. They've had 1,000 top-end draft picks, but if you haven't got the core senior players there and the right club, those players don't become much. So I think the key to your football club is your core senior players.
Who are they at Richmond when you think of them right now?
Well, what a disappointment Hopper and Taranto have been, for starters.
In fairness to them, they didn't realise that they were
Taranto won a best and fairest last year, but what I'll say is they were mauled on the weekend by a young Hawthorn midfield in that situation. Dion Precia's been injured a lot. Nan Curvis, not sure where he stands. And then you've got
Bolter.
Dusty and these guys. So, there's not a lot there, which you've got to be very careful of when you just throw young kids in, because what are you looking up to? And that's the worry I have for Richmond.
The Melbourne Football Club have been through something similar in the last 10 to 15 years in building from the bottom. We know that they reached the pinnacle. They're not going to reach the pinnacle this year because they're not going to play in finals. So how do they turn things around? Well, their CEO, Gary Pert, has put a key forward on the agenda.
We've now got the opportunity to reset. We've got the opportunity also to look at that forward line, which seems to be something, it's an ingredient that we have to get right if we're going to be a serious threat again in the finals next year.
Lordo, who would be on the list, do you think? Who'd be on their whiteboard?
Well, I just reckon they've got to be careful, because sometimes late in seasons you can have a few guys that can do okay. And last week it was Van Ryan and Petty, but they haven't been able to do it all year. So they kicked 7 between them. So I still think they have to go hard. So I'd start with Max King. I would ask the question. You don't know what St Kilda feel about, okay, we've finished the season pretty well. We're more unpredictable. Other players have popped up. Could we bolster another area by letting him go. It's probably unlikely, but I was just saying that.
They'd probably ask for Petrarca in return, by the way.
Yeah, and then
You just
Jamie
mentioned Tom Lynch
Yes.
from Richmond in another context. Would you consider him? He's on the last year of a back-ended deal. There's a $1.5 million contract attached to it. Would you consider?
Well,
aspects of that?
he's the one that would be more attainable and more easy. Max King's sort of a 1 in a million shot, but Tom Lynch is certainly an opportunity for him.
They've asked the last 2 years, though, haven't they,
Yeah.
Damo, in a more informal way.
Yeah.
It feels like Tom wants to stay loyal to Richmond, given he got there and achieved the ultimate success.
The landscape's changed.
It has
hasn't
changed,
No
though,
one's
yeah.
there. Damien Hardwick's not there. Dusty Martin's not there. Obviously, Cochin and Revolt this time last year made decisions. Brendan Gale's not there. We've just seen a coach be shell-shocked in thinking they're a top 4 potential team to one that's going to win a wooden spoon. Jimmy, just on the Melbourne team, though, is 2025 going to be a waste without them adding a key forward? Because 2024 clearly was, and arguably 23 and 22 were as well.
A fit Christian Petrarca, hopefully Oliver gets fit and ready for the season. Max Gawn, all these players, they've certainly got the capability. They're going to find a different way to shift the ball. They just can't give up on trying new attacking ways. So I don't think it's a waste. I think there's still enough talent there, Lloydie, to be a top 4, top 6 side.
What I will say is, these things are in the works for a year, so they would have players. Like you look at Hawthorn, it's public. Battle's been worked on for a year. Barras has been worked on for a period of time. Perryman's been worked on for a period of time. Players don't just suddenly just go. Jeremy Cameron would have been worked on for 2 years to get him to Geelong. So I'm sure Melbourne have been working on some players because they can't go in with that same forward line.
Yeah, they need to work on Christian Petrarca staying, and Jake Lever was interesting on Breakfast Radio this morning on that point.
The thing with Track is we probably just haven't understood what he's gone through since his injury. He spent a long time away from the football club, and for senior players like myself, it was just a real eye-opener of what he's been going through. And you can see now, I know he wasn't in a hell of a lot over the past sort of 10 to 12 weeks, but since he's spoken to the group and just spoken about what he's gone through, you can see him coming through the door, and it was almost like a weight had lifted off his shoulders.
I'm staggered to hear Melbourne people like Jake Lever and like other people in recent days have been talking about, they're only now realising what Christian Petrarca went through. I think a lot of people in the industry knew what he went through, but it seems to me, or whether it's just what they're saying publicly, that the only people who didn't know how serious it was and how disgruntled he got and how serious the medical condition was, Sam, were some of his teammates. And am I overreacting to what I'm hearing there? We only heard him talk about it. We're only now realising how bad it is.
You two would probably be better placed to comment on that. Do you get caught in your own little bubble when you're playing?
Can I just say on that, I ripped my hamstring off the bone and I'd watched 16 weeks of footy, and I went to the club and I said to them, I am mentally fried. They said, you need 2 weeks. So go to the Gold Coast for 2 weeks. The whole club knew about it the day I left. I'm more staggered by the breakdown in communication that players are saying, where's Christian gone? Why isn't Christian turned up to games? And it's taken for them to turn on him to be dirty on them, him to have to walk in.
It's a great point, Lloydie.
And now they're all saying, oh, now we get it. So it's a
widespread problem.
It's a widespread problem. It shows where this club is at, how it got to that point, that nobody was communicating what was going on with Christian Petrarca.
Let's talk about the go-home factor. We've seen it multiple times now. We've seen it with Shai Bolton, I should say, in the last couple of days, potentially wanting to go home to Perth. We've seen it with Alex Neil-Bullen and the South Australian state where he's from. You can see the list of other examples there. Does this happen too much, Jimmy, with players that enter longer-term contracts?
Yeah, and I know there's, for a lot of them, there are some very honest and true reasons, but it is almost the card that goes on the table that you can't question. And it's difficult for clubs, and I don't know what the solution is here with the Players Association, players and clubs, because clubs commit long-term contracts. A lot of these guys were in pretty good contracts, or they're pretty young, so clubs are committed to them with draft picks and time and investment and development. So I don't know what the solution is for clubs going forward, because if they lay out a contract, let's say it's 5 years at really good money, they've already put that into their system of how they're planning out their teams for future years, where you shift money and things like that. And then to have that, I don't know what a club is supposed to do.
And they've given the player the security that he wants in terms of the long deal with the big money.
Yeah, and I know there's always extenuating circumstances, and completely acknowledge that, and some players need to go back home, so not diminishing the actual family reasons. But how can we keep moving forward with honouring contracts, clubs committing long term, but then still players want that freedom of movement of whenever they want?
Clubs just need to stand firm. I just think the players' power has taken over. I think players would come, like Tim Kelly, for example. They made him stay, didn't they?
They did for 1 year.
For 1 year until he saw out his contract. He was wonderful for them in the second year. I think more clubs need to just go, no, you signed a contract, you're staying, we'll support you as best we can, rather than just rolling over.
And that speaks to the strength of culture at a club like Geelong. But it's probably the not as established ones, Jimmy, that sort of go, okay, well, I guess we're leaving.
I think there was a pretty even mix there. There were some guys who came from, call it, clubs down the bottom of the ladder to some pretty strong clubs. You mentioned Geelong were in a pretty strong position. But again, I think we need to find a solution eventually, because long-term contracts, as you mentioned, Damo, clubs are committing to them on good terms, length. But then if you get halfway through the deal and the team starts to go down south, does that mean now you're going home? Or if the team's still contending, are you still going home?
You work in the footy space, Jimmy. Is there ever a situation soon where we will get whereby clubs can actually dictate where the player go to once he makes the decision for family reasons he wants to return to a certain part of the country?
I think that's a question that's been floated in nearly every CBA arrangement, but I don't think that'll get total support from the Players Association. They want full support around the players, and you're talking about almost the American model of you're just trading players and contracts and you can send them off and do deals. I don't think.
Well, it works one way at the moment. It works the players' way at the moment.
Exactly. So I'd be curious to see whether there is a solution going forward.